Welcome everyone. Today I have a very special guide for Diablo 4 building for the Thorn build. So let me show you guys a bit of the replay and I'll show you guys how I was able to achieve this. Firstly, let's have a look at my Thorn with all my skill casting and also my abilities. So just by casting my shouts and also my berserk, I was able to achieve 30,000 Thorn. And this can easily translate into 200,000, 500,000 or 1 million damage to a single target and goes a lot further into AoE damage that will spread around. So let me briefly show you guys how that is possible. Just this amulet alone spent me about over 20 million gold to make this one possible. So this one has some really good damage reduction, close damage, all defensive skills and also +3 to toughness nail. I really want to make the Thorns build work for you guys and I'll show you guys what is possible. So let me just show you guys the toughness nail over here. So notice over here, we have 18% more Thorn because of this passive. And this is a theory crafting build I really want to try and I finally got it working. So you can see here is 6 out of 3 for the toughest nail, which gave us 18% more Thorn damage and also deals 10% of the Thorn in terms of bleeding damage. Now I'm sure you guys are excited to see the replays. Let's have a look at the highlights and I go through the advantage and also disadvantage of this build. So having a look over here, I was able to achieve 30,000 Thorn and this translates into insanely amount of high damage against early game and also mid game targets. So the first dungeon I tested is a tier 58 dungeon. Now I'm pretty much in the end game, so I want to test a higher level dungeon at the start. You can see that against tier level 58 dungeons in the cultist refuge. Yes, if you've seen our previous videos, this is where you farm the shackle. So notice that enemies actually melt around me. And this is the highlights of the Thorn. You deal a lot of AoE damage. Notice that when they hit me, they take like 200,000 damage in one attack. And when there's multiple enemies, this easily stack up to few million damage in one instance. So in terms of a tier 58 dungeon, we have no problem. And this is one of the biggest highlights for this build. You can see that I'll be spinning around, the build is so easy, I just have to press one button. Every other button is just for defensive purpose and also for bonus damage. Now of course, our single target damage is not the highest. I'll show you guys one of the demonstrations against the boss as well. So while there's multiple enemies, you do a lot of damage. Now over here, what I really want to show you guys is there is a downside of this build. Because Thorns build is going to be a melee build and at a much later game, so here is a tier 89 dungeon. I want to show you guys that we can still deal enough damage against the elite monsters in this level, but we're actually dying because we're more melee. So notice that we're killing enemies, but they're taking damage from Thorn. We're actually taking damage from monsters. And when there's too many monsters, what's going to happen is the game kind of lags because of the Thorn. I don't know why it's actually proccing like this. And you can see the game actually lags and it actually kills me. So I'm not sure what is happening with the interactions, but my game lags while I'm actually in a bunch of monsters and the calculation of Thorn is just affecting my actual character. I'm not actually dying. Now, no, after testing a few times, so I'll show you guys the whole replay. So notice here I'm actually lagging and I'm actually dying. So yes, the build is not the ideal build for the ultimate endgame barbarian build. Because you can start this build at around level 70 and this build is extremely powerful at level 70. So this is one of the best barbarian early game to mid game build. And here, just to show you guys a general testing, I did another dungeon for tier 64. So around tier 64, this is a sweet spot for this build. You can be farming dungeons, farming monsters, and you tend to not take too much damage. And against most of the monsters, even against suppression monsters, you can do a really good damage. Now do notice, we're still taking more damage, and I wanted to show you guys that the weakness of the build. Firstly, it is against a single target. Secondly, because we're melee build, after tier 70 we'll become much more squishy because we do not have enough of the defensive effects on your chest. So our chest is going to be a unique item that is going to be razor plate. The downside of that is you don't get enough affixes, but you deal pretty good damage. So if you guys want to play Barbarian up to tier 70 with the Thorns build, it is still doable. You can see around tier 64 I don't have that much problem and we deal pretty good damage. Now here's a demonstration against the boss. So I actually happen to have found this boss actually attacks multiple times, which is actually really good for the build. So notice that I'm not doing too much damage. And the moment the boss actually swings at us multiple times, he actually dies. Which is actually really fun, right? So this is definitely an alternative build for the Barbarian build. And yes guys, I'm still working on the no shot build. I'm planning to make a build that doesn't use too many shots, that is more interesting, that is more rotational, and that is more combo based. And of course guys, similar to most of our build videos, I'll show you guys my entire item choices for this build. And the biggest highlight for this entire build is that you can be making this build after level 70. As long as you have one unique item, this build is done. And this build is very low intensive in terms of item choices. You can have the weakest weapons and they still deals a lot of damage. So you can see I'm sitting around about 14,000 thorn, or I don't have any thorns on my gears and this still works. Now, similar to all of our build videos, I'll be working with mobilities and also provide you guys with a cheat sheet of the summary of the spells and also the abilities and also the choice of legendaries. So make sure you guys check the links below and we'll be updating this build for you guys very soon. Now, one of the biggest highlights for this build is you just need one chest. If you have this unique chest, I actually got this chest at 71. Notice at this level, so I became a Thorns Barbarian at level 71. This chest is droppable at World Tier 4 difficulty, and this chest was amazing for me. Once I got this chest from 70 all the way to level 100, I had no trouble. I just needed one chest. You can pick any of the defensive stats for the helmet. As long as you have a bit of cooldown reduction, maximum armor or maximum life, that's okay as well. Notice I'm using the helmet that is from my previous build for the maximum fury for the Hota build. We don't need that. Now during replays, you can see me exploding and also spinning a little bit. I'm not really using these gloves for much of the reasons for the special unique effect. I'm just using this one for +4 of the whirlwind. I'd rather to have a critical chance with whirlwind, but I don't really have a whirlwind gloves. So I'm just using this glass for the placeholder. You are not necessary to have these unique gloves for this build. Now in terms of the pants, you just want to find as many damage reduction and also total armor you can on the pants. I have some okay stats on these pants, a bit of damage reduction, a bit of reduced damage, and a bit of armor. Now while you are playing the game, if you happen to have Phantomanity, which is an item which is supposedly super rare compared to Shackle in the previous video, right? So if you have found this item, what you can do is you can there perk into overhealing. So there is a perk over here that allows you to overheal as you spend more fury. So you can perk into 3 points over here by taking away some of the other points. For example, we can be taking away the points from maximum life, even the bleeding slow from over here. And this allows us to have overhealing and a constant generation of the barriers. Because what you're going to see is, with a two-handed weapon, you'll be dealing more damage while having a barrier. And this also goes back for my helmet. I'm going with a legendary effect to get about 8,900 barrier when I have against elites. Now in terms of the boots, I'm going with a bit of fury cost reduction, movement speed, all stats, and for the boots, you do want two types of boots. One is that whirlwind will pull enemies together for you to do AoE damage. The second kind of boots is when you're unstoppable, you'll be having more movement speed. So this is my utility boots, this is my fighting boots. Now as for the weapons, you do not want core skill damage over here, because we want to amplify the damage from the, against the monsters with the thorn, right? So we want vulnerability, critical strike damage, close damage, and also strength. So notice that all my weapons will have those stats. You can have all stats as well in terms of strength, that also works. So my previous weapons, notice those are going with core skill damage for my Hota build, but for the thorn build, I'm still going with a close damage. Now the biggest highlight of this build is that most of the items that you wanted and the Codex you want are craftable. So it is not craftable to have barrier with bonus damage, but one of the second two-handed weapon, we can have increased thorn while berserking up to 12,000 thorn. And this is also amplified as you go to level 100. So initially you start about 3,000, and level 100 you have about 5,000 bonus thorn while berserking at the Oculus. So you can be crafting this one for your build. Now similarly, as for the other one-hand weapon of choice, one can go with whirlwind, increased critical chance, and also the spreading of thorns damage. So here I decided to go more defensive. So 40% to spread thorn damage when I take damage. So this means when I take one instance of damage, that is spread around all the enemies around me. When I'm around 10-20 enemies, this easily amplified to 10, 20 or even 30 million damage. Now as for my rings and also for my amulets, it's pretty straightforward. The amulet, I just want damage reduction, I want all defensive spells and also more damage reduction to close enemies. If you can get tough as nail, it is nice, but ideally this only gives me about how much? About 9% more thorn in terms of the increased damage. So here you can see with a level 6 tough as nail, we only get 18% more thorn. Now if I take this away, what you can see is what we have over here is we get about 9% more Thorn. So having 9% more Thorn with Amulet, well, give it or take, you gain about 2700 Thorn because of the Amulet. It is nice, but it's not the biggest deal, so I just want to do this one to theory craft for you guys. Now in terms of the defensive aspects, I'm going with increased armor as we deal more damage. You can have one offensive aspects over here as well, but become unkillable after tier 50 or tier 60, you do want more armor. Now finally, as for the rings, you want critical chance, vulnerability, and also critical damage. You can also go with close damage and also resource generation, so you can constantly be spinning with your whirlwind. You still want the double shots for the resource gain and also the cooldown reduction. Now ideally guys, you'll be using a two-handed sword, which allows you to deal more slashing damage, which we'll talk about on the skills very soon. For the expertise, because we're already using a two-handed sword, we'll be using two-handed axe to deal more damage to vulnerable enemies. Now if you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, non-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates, and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4. Now because we do have the cheat sheet over here with the Thorns Barbarian, and this was when I first made the Barbarian, you can see there's a small adjustment over here, and I'll speak to the guys and Mobilitics to update this one. So definitely come over here for some of the updates and also for some of the latest changes for the Thorn build. And over here, what I did was I have made the updated level 100 endgame Thorn build for you guys if you want to try this out. Do be aware guys, this build is not great after tier 70. But it can work wonderfully to some instances, but I've tested at level tier 89 we can't really do the dungeons. But before that, I guess level 70, level 60, you should be fine using the correct build. Now because you guys can follow me through the skill trees and also paragons, I'll briefly talk about some of the highlights. So here we were vulnerable with the whirlwind, and also we're dealing bleeding with whirlwind. We're not using a basic spell for the launch strike, so this is a placement holder so we can use other spells. We're using triple defensive spells with Rally Cry, Iron Skin, and also Challenging Shots. We're also going with only 1 point Outburst, because this only gives flat zone damage, and this is not great in the endgame, so 1 point is enough. 3 points into Toughest Nail, so I got 6 points with my Amulet. And here, some maximum HP is always nice because you deal more damage. You also have the benefits of the Challenging Shot, which increase your Thorn by the maximum HP. Now because I was a little short on points, only 2 points went into the bonus generation of resource. We're not that resource dependent, and if you find yourself dying a little more, you can go into the damage reduction while berserk, because you deal the most damage while berserking. I also allocated 1 point into Hamstring, because I wanted to do more damage while enemies are slowed and also bleeding over here. So we're not really stunning enemies, but we're slowing enemies with bleeding damage, because we'll be bleeding enemies with a whirlwind that uses slashing weapon. Now it is also optional guys, if you want to go with increased damage while fortified. I decided to go damage reduction while fortified because I'm constantly getting fortified using my gears. And finally, because our build is rotated around Wrath of the Berserker for the bonus Thorn on the two-handed weapon, even though this only lasts for 5 seconds and also we only get about 4 seconds over here, it is still enough. So while in the middle of the fray, if you can't kill enemies in 5 seconds, well, you'll be in trouble. And we'll also do a little more damage with two-handed weapon with a critical strike bonus. This will actually translate over 60% more critical bonus damage. Now one of the bigger changes I have compared to the previous build is that because most of my gears I have more critical chance, I decided to do more bleeding damage and also more overpower with bleeding. And you can see sometimes we're doing a bleeding explosion because of this. Now previously I was going with the Unrestrained, which deals more damage while berserking. You can also pick between the two to see which one you deal more damage. For me, with high critical chance, I can run this one now. Now if we come over to the Paragon points and also the skill choices, so if you have seen our previous Hota guide, this is about 95% the same as the Hota build. I made it this way so that you have more of the rare nodes at the start of the fight, and this allows you to get a double bonus. And over here you can see I have 3 rare nodes, and over here I start to have 3 and 2 over here. You can see that eventually you'll run out of stats to get the benefits of the double rare nodes, and that is okay. So here I have tailored this particular board for most of my Barbarian build. And because the Thorns build is a little weaker after tier 70, you can easily transition into a Hota build with a one-shot or speed farming build using this particular board. So briefly going through the glyphs over here. The first glyph we have is going to be the Thorns glyph, which allows us to do more damage to enemies while having the Thorn, and also amplifies the rear node by 100%. Notice I'm getting 40% more physical damage, and also 400 more armor, and also 20 more strength because of this. It's actually doubled, 200 more armor, right? Now the rest of the glyphs are pretty straightforward. So over here we have the increased damage to close enemies, and here we have the shot reduction and also magical nodes bonus. Over here we also have the increased damage while healthy, and here we have the increased damage while fortified. Finally, we have increased damage while enemies are vulnerable. The only highlight is you do want to stay over 80% HP and also having a barrier while healthy to deal the most damage. Now while fighting lower tier dungeons, you can also use Temerity to replace the boost over here, to replace the pens over here. So by replacing the pens, you'll lose the fortify, but you'll constantly be getting barrier. And this allows you to do more damage. And against lower tier dungeons, tier 30, tier 40, tier 50, I can run these pens and nothing can kill me. And this is quite strong. Now briefly talking about skill rotations. It's pretty straightforward, you just cast your shots. The first and also third shot are here for resource generation and also bonus damage. Your challenging shot will be defensive and also offensive. You get more thorn, more bonus life because of this. And finally, as for the Wrath of Berserker, you're here to deal more damage with Wrath of Berserker. This also provides you with damage reduction and also resource gain. So the build itself is very straightforward. Because you're not spending double fury, you actually have a lot of fury because of the shots. As long as you have one of the shots going, you should be fine. Don't be too greedy to spend all of your shots together. Keeping one of the shots on rotation is really good. While against a group of enemies, you want to group them up using the Whirlwind Pulse enemies. And while they're together against you, they pretty much die when it touches you. Now while you're low on HP, make sure you cast Iron Skin and then top yourself up with more HP. This allows you to do more damage while healthy, and having a barrier means dealing more damage. Now against most of the bosses, we do fall a little short if the boss does not attack you a lot. Against this boss, the boss is attacking me a lot, which is great. But against other bosses that summons that doesn't attack you, well, you're a little trouble. So make sure you group the monsters next to the boss and make sure they hit you. Because they actually do more damage hitting you than you hitting them. And you can see over here the boss is dying because he's hitting me, right? Which is actually really fun. So what I do now is I'll provide you guys with my full highlight replay to show you guys me fighting different levels of the dungeon, and also at the end of the replay you can see my gears and also stats choices. Remember guys, you don't need the perfect stats. If you have the unique chairs, you can start running Thorn in a much early game around level 70. And this will take you all the way up to tier 50, tier 60 we use the Thorn build. But it does fall off, so consider changing into the Hota build once you have different gears. Now, in case you guys didn't know, I'll be live streaming on Twitch again, and I have just started. So make sure to come over to the links below to join us on Twitch live to say hi, maybe ask me questions or share any tips with the viewers. And while you're here, make sure you follow. And if you do have your Twitch Prime, this is a really good time to use your Twitch Prime over here, supporting us with Twitch Prime. And yes guys, join us as I test build for Diablo, and also join us as you play the game and also farm the game. So stay a while and also listen. We'll also be doing some giveaways and also special viewer events in the Diablo as well. Maybe we do PvP and also related events in the game as we get to the end game, and also help players to go through the dungeons.